I am being watched. Welcome everyone to MaleFuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about Person of Interest, Season 2, Episode 19. It's called Trojan Horse. So spoilers for the episode as always. I thought this was a good episode. I thought it was a really good episode actually. Without being maybe one of the more standouts, it had a lot of good things going on. The main plot was interesting. It wasn't as predictable as sometimes the main swerves in the episodes can be. I mean, the red herring, in hindsight, I was like, yeah, of course he was the red herring, but he just seemed like a bad guy. So it was actually almost a surprise that it wasn't just him. Maybe I've just been lulled by so many of the show's plots that they've got me now. They've got me where they want me. But I think a lot of the excitement here is that even if you weren't enraptured in the main plot, which does end up having some ties to the larger things that the show is building to, the subplots are very good and exciting, particularly the subplot where Reese is in the first chunk of the episode. I mean, that's one of the things that makes it feel fresh as well, is that we've done episodes before where Finch is kind of on his own without Reese helping with the main case. This episode starts that way, but then it pivots about a third or so in, maybe halfway, thereabouts, where Reese comes back into the main story and ends up helping from then on. And that just felt a little bit different. It felt like, okay, Finch did everything he could really do up until a point, but then Reese coming back in kind of shook things up again. I will say the main exciting surprise of the Reese sort of subplot that he has early on, that then pivots into Shaw's subplot, was that it was kind of spoiled in the credits. I noticed the actor's name. I noticed her name in the opening titles at the start. So that was a bit of a shame. It would have been nice to have a genuine surprise, because when she shows up, it does feel like a surprising little moment. I just knew she was going to show up because of the credits. It's just, and that's not the show's fault. That's just TV in general for the past 50 years, pretty much. But super excited to see her again, because obviously she was tied to such a great episode. She's a great character. And she is basically keeping an eye on the parents of her partner who was killed, and there's been a smear story planted by Control about who this guy was, that he was actually a terrorist. Finch, seemingly later on in the episode, has hacked into the CIA and put out a different version of that story, so that now it's in the papers that he was a hero and he died a hero, and that leads to Shaw coming to see Finch. So they were both exciting scenes. She has two scenes. She has exactly two scenes in this episode. But the first one's with Reese, and that was fun because it was tying into how they can relate to each other. You know, where Reese even says, I knew you would do this because it's what I would have done. So he's putting out a branch and saying, hey, we're kind of a lot alike. We're kind of similar. I'm showing you that you can be like me. You can do new things. You can find some redemption, whatever that may be. So it's the person who's very similar to him reaching out to him. And then the scene later on where she comes to see Finch, it's not only is it an opposite type of person, but it's particularly the person who gave Reese a new purpose. And she kind of belittles it. She kind of says, oh, you gave Reese a hobby, and you seem to think I want a hobby. And kind of looks over all the information, the pin board, and sort of, make some comments. But what's really exciting here, and I did not see them pulling this card so quickly. I thought they were going to wait until she saw her in person, but she sees a photograph of Root behind Finch and goes, oh, the woman from the hotel. So, she was very interested. Her conversation got cut short, and basically has seemingly taken it upon herself to investigate Root. That's what she seems to want to do. That she even says, I guess I just found my hobby. And it's interesting because, in an unofficial sense at least, it feels like now we have a regular agent who's here dealing with all the main threats, and we have one who's out doing field work, someone who's off doing, maybe a manhunt's not quite the right word, but someone off going to look for Root on her own that can maybe check in every once in a while. I mean, I assume the checking in will happen in the finale, or maybe even before the finale, depending on how quickly we come back to it. But we've only got 3 episodes left. I suspect she'll at least be in the finale, Shaw, if not the last 2 episodes, if not all the episodes that are left. I don't know. But this was a really fun way to bring her back in and just, again, eke out the relationship she has with both Reese and Finch and play on their strengths in terms of like the similarities between her and Reese and how that's playing off of each other, and then the way she plays off of Finch, which is interesting because, like I said, Finch was this person who kind of rescued Reese and gave him a purpose, and it's like he's trying to do that with her, and part of what makes it fascinating is that she's not just reacting like Reese did, and part of it's because her exit from the lifestyle has been a little different to Reese, right? Obviously, there's things you can compare, but it's a lot more fresh. She's still very, like, emotionally charged by all of it. But the way she's belittling Finch's offer and is a lot more skeptical of Finch is exciting to watch because it's again, it's like, okay, we're doing something similar to Reese and Finch, but it's not the exact same. She is a different person with different characteristics. She's going to react differently. And that kind of mistrust or feistiness, although Finch himself points out that she's not pointing a gun at him, and that's progress. I did also laugh at the end of the scene when he looks down at Bear and calls him a traitor because she claps Bear and Bear never, you know, barked at her when she came in. He let her waltz in. So I thought that was funny. I thought that was a fun little bit. The other subplot, of course, is the Beecher stuff, and we're still playing off the death of Szymanski in the last episode where Carter's convinced there's something fishy about all that, basically gets Fusco, or she voices her concerns to Fusco, and Fusco takes it upon himself to look into Beecher, because Beecher won't tell her who gave him the tip that led to this planted money being found on Szymanski. So she's convinced that he's involved. Fusco basically accuses him of that in the bathroom. But Fusco, and we've seen him do this once before actually, he's learned how to clone the phones. Finch has taught him something, and he uses it with him. And we actually have a couple of scenes with Elias this episode. The first one's actually just Elias and Finch having their chess match. And it kind of ties into all this subplot as opposed to the stuff that's going on in the main plot, because it's Elias talking about how Szymanski and the prosecutor dying actually helps his rival, like whatever gang or the Russians or whoever it is that's involved with that. So he's doing this whole metaphor where he's taking some of his chess pieces away because he's trying to win even though he's got a disadvantage. But we get another scene with Elias where it's Beecher who goes to see him, and this is after Beecher goes to the head of HR, Quinn, who it turns out is his godfather. Did they mention that in the scene? I don't think we knew that before. Quinn basically gives him a bit of a yarn and kind of just basically tells him to back down, but then Simmons comes out and is like, hey, is he going to be a problem asking questions? And he's like, well, let's hope not. But he does go to Elias, he does ask some questions, and Elias is a little cryptic, but he does say one flat out very helpful thing, is that he tried to pay off Szymanski and Szymanski threw it back in their face. He was clean. He was not a dirty cop. And Fusco's recorded this. He lets it play for Carter, who immediately wants to use it as evidence. And he's like, hey, this was an illegal tap. We can't use this as evidence. But you at least know that Beecher was set up by someone else. Like, he's not the one who's dirty. So this is around the part of the episode where I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure Beecher's time is nigh. And sure enough, and if anything, I almost double backed on it, because I thought they were almost making it too obvious when Quinn was talking to Simmons for the second time, where Simmons is like, hey, he was asking questions, like, what do we do about it? And interestingly, Simmons actually gives Quinn a suggestion. He suggests that they just promote him to a new role in the police force that's maybe out of town, somewhere upstate, and that gets him away from all this. So he gives him a non-lethal option. And Quinn, and this is like on the writing here, they're showing how ruthless he is. He basically just rejects that and says, I always warned him that police work could be dangerous. He's choosing to kill Beecher. He's not even taking the risk of letting Beecher live somewhere else. He's putting a stop to it now. And maybe that's why he's been so good at keeping his identity a secret, and that's why he was such a secret to the audience in season 1, is because he is this ruthless. He will take out anyone who could possibly expose who he is. So, but because of this conversation, I almost thought, oh, maybe I was jumping the gun. The fact that they're signposting that they're going to try and kill him probably means more likely that he's not dying as quickly as I think. Maybe he'll still be dead by the end of the season, but maybe the initial attempt won't work. Of course, that was wrong. He does end up dying. And I actually went back again. So, like I said, I thought he was going to die, and then that conversation made it feel like, oh no, they're telling us they're going to try, so maybe it won't happen. When Carter phones him and says she wants to meet him and talk about things, and he's like in the middle of like a bust. He's like, hey, yeah, I'll meet you after at the precinct. And she says, I'll be waiting. And it was that line. When Carter said, I'll be waiting, that was the moment I went, oh, he's dead. He's 100% dead. Nothing's saving him. And of course, the tension's ramping up here because the payphone next to Finch at the end of the main plot starts ringing to suggest there's a new number. So Beecher's number's very, very last minute. So the machine was trying to step in quickly and give them a hint, but it was just too late to actually help. Obviously it's nice that Carter got to know that he wasn't just a dirty cop before he died. She at least knew that was untrue, that he was a better man than she had been giving him credit for, and that's something to hold on to. Obviously it makes the death itself more tragic, that we know he's not dirty, or at the very least he's not that dirty. He's not working with the lies, he's not getting other cops killed. In fact, when he talks to Quinn, he even says his motivation is that, hey, now we have to look into this because a dead cop's having his reputation ruined, so that matters to me. I want to clear this up. So he even makes it clear that his motivation here, as much as he has been talked to by Fusco, and he is aware that Carter's thinking bad things of him, the actual framing he puts in the scene when he's talking to Quinn is that, no, a dead cop's reputation is being ruined and I can't live with that. It sets him up to be, okay, he's actually quite an empathetic character. He's someone we can be sad that he's dead. And it plays it quite somber at the end of the episode. So the subplot was done quite well. It gave a lot of weight to a character's death whose subplot has been, it's not been the best part of the show by any means. Like the whole Beecher coming in, like I like him because he's Sterling K. Brown, but the actual Beecher character coming in and like trying to ask out Carter has been kind of one of those like just by the numbers TV subplots where every time we see him, it just advances a little bit, and it's never that exciting on its own. It's never doing anything particularly interesting. It wasn't until the lie detector test with Carter where there was that interesting pivot to him, where him being associated with her cost her something. That was a really cool way to like reveal that information, that he's potentially a bad cop to Carter. That was the first time it had a spark of like real creativity, and I really liked that. But the ending was well handled. They made me care a bit before he finally died, and I think that, it sets up Quinn as a more vicious bad guy, and this episode's like doing work to set up him as a bigger bad guy. We've also got Control as a bad guy, and now we've also got Uncle Nolan. His character's name is John Greer. I don't know if maybe he said that because he obviously spoke to Stanton in that flashback a while ago. Maybe he said his name there. I don't remember his name ever coming up. But he's apparently from a group called Decima, or Project Decima, something to that effect, which is what the main plot ends up building up to, is that the people behind all the shady corporate espionage are actually this Decima group that he's in. That's who he represents. And Finch makes these connections by the end because the virus that Stanton planted on that hard drive led to that name, and he also suspects or knows that it was designed to go after the machine. That was its main target, which makes sense if you've got a shady like group of bad guys who are doing espionage and really like black ops stuff. It makes sense if they know the machine exists that they want to take it out because they don't want to have their moves predicted. At least that's the simple explanation for it. Maybe there's more to it, but even right now, that makes sense to me already. So you've got that. The actual main plot though is that it's this woman who's like a VP, or I mean not an exact rank, but it was something like that. She's high up in this tech company who does a lot of computer work for other companies, and the bad guys, because at first they think, oh, it's just another company stealing stuff, their tech rivals, that kind of thing. But it actually seems to be the Chinese government who are stealing like just information. Like basically all the clients that this tech company have, includes the military and stuff like that, in China are stealing all this information. It's actually just straight up, it's not corporate espionage, it's just, well, espionage, I guess. It's just regular old-fashioned espionage. But the title of the episode, Trojan Horse, and the reason for that, which is quite smart, I think, is the idea that, when they all find this out, when Finch and Reese expose them by the end of the episode, the American government just go, oh, it's the Chinese, clearly this has been a breach of things, we have to deal with it. and they're so obsessed with defending the country from another country, they don't even realize or consider that there's a bigger threat that's actually got more of the information. Because they mentioned at the end that only a small percentage of the information was actually going to China. All of it was going to Decima. They're the real threat in power here. And hell, obviously the guy who owns the company, who turns out to be a bad guy, and shoots himself as per agreed with John Greer on the phone. John Greer phones him and says, hey, that time has come, and we made their agreement. If this day ever comes when everything's getting exposed, you have to kill yourself, your family will be taken care of, which he does. So it says like that. But he even has a line when he's justifying what he does, that the future is about whoever controls information. Whoever has all information can control it. And the idea of countries and that being what you're loyal to breaks down. I'm actually someone who thinks patriotism in general is pretty stupid. So it upset me on a fundamental level. I agreed with one sentence that he said, where he said patriotism's old-fashioned. I actually agree with that part, but everything else he said was all just, you know, like dystopian, like one or two mega corporations or governments control everything and can control all the information everyone's seeing, all that stuff. So all this was hitting the big stuff. This is all coming from the ending, though. The actual, you know, gist of the episode is that Finch infiltrates by being not IT, that's the phrase I was looking for. It's like, what do you call it? He's fixing the computers and stuff. He's the IT guy. He goes in and quickly bonds with the character. Monica is the person of interest, this VP character. And she's investigating because there was an employee who died mysteriously like a week ago in an accident, but she's looking into it because a lot of the information about his employment seems to be falsified, and it's because she's looking into that she's become a target. So Finch is looking into a lot of this on his own at first because Reese is off trying to find Shaw. That makes for some interesting stuff. You know, he has to do it all on his own, and it's actually quite fun seeing him being in a position where he actually does quite well. He sneaks into her office at one point, and her assistant, who later turns out to be one of the spies, you know, it turns out like half the people in this building are spies. Basically, this is like not just some small thing. It makes sense that even the boss is one of the bad guys, and that's why he's hired a bunch of people who are in on it, I guess. But the assistant says, hey, what are you doing in her office? And he's like, oh, I'm doing a security update. And he's like, well, we had one last week. He's like, well, this is important. He's like, well, what is it specifically? Like, he's going to catch him out. And Finch, of course, knowing computers, just hits him with something that sounds extremely legit. I can't even repeat it. Something about kernel root codes or something. I can't even begin. But it sounded authentic. Clearly, Finch knows how to bluff when it comes to computers. And he bonds a little bit later on after they start taking shots at her, because she gets fired, she gets framed for leaking information. Then they take shots at her. Reese comes out and saves her. So they all end up working together back at Reese's place, and they're hacking together and bonding. Reese even cracks a couple of jokes about how they should be alone together. And it was funny, actually, because he made that joke about how, oh, are you attracted to this one, Finch? And I'm like, I feel there's a bit of an age gap here, Reese. I feel I thought, which is fine for him to crack that joke, but I thought Finch would say that. I was expecting Finch to say she's like 20 years younger than me, because I think she is 20 years younger than him, but he never actually says that. Which, I mean, fair enough, whatever. Who could set the adults? Who cares? But he lets it go. Obviously, Finch clearly is the one who owns the company that has made her an offer at the end, because she's like, hey, I got an offer about CPU architectures or something. And Finch is like, oh, that sounds like a perfect fit. Yeah, you hired her, Finch. We all know you hired her. You're not hiding anything anymore, little man, with your limp and your glasses. We know what you're up to. So that was all fun. Actually, interestingly, someone who pays some attention to computers, them talking about the CPU and the tablets being hex core and how people said that was overkill, but they absolutely need it. That made me chuckle because everything's octa-core now. It's only been a decade or so, but it's just funny how I'm like, yeah, of course, yeah, everything's on octa-core. I never say that. I just say 8-core, but yeah, octa-core. Yeah, with hyper-threading. I know CPUs, kinda. But yeah, I got a little chuckle out of that. And then there's them sneaking back in. They use Bear as a distraction at one point with her security card. So all the guards go after the dog. it is fun the idea that Bear's actually in the mission. I mean, Finch was doing a lot of the legwork this episode. Everyone got involved, and now Shaw, who's our deployed operative, who's off doing stuff. I'm going to make a comparison here that makes no sense. The actual comparison I should make is when people send operatives overseas. You've got your home officers and you've got your operatives overseas. It's like an XCOM to me, where you've got your main squad, but you'll send people off on infiltration missions. I feel like Shaw has been sent off on an infiltration mission. Literally, you're only going to get that reference if you play XCOM. But that's what it felt like to me. She's the one away doing stuff that she'll have results for later that'll affect the plot, and that'll be fun. So, yeah. But I mean, the main plot was good, though. I thought the character was likable with her chemistry with Finch. I enjoyed all the subplot stuff. I thought Fusco, you know, I mentioned obviously him getting involved, but I actually really liked him getting protective. Like him going up to Beecher and being like, hey, where did that money come from? You better stay away from Carr. Like, it felt kind of nice in like a sort of big brother way that he was like, hey, you better not be messing with Carr. That's like my little sister now. I don't even know if Carter's younger than him. I just assume she is, but it doesn't really matter. But that was the energy that like he was giving off. It felt nice because we've been building these characters and their friendships over, you know, almost 2 seasons now. We're near the end of the season. It's just nice to see some of that pay off. And I think that's also why it's really sweet when you see Reese trying to reach out to Shaw and convince her that like this life that Finch has given him was worth pursuing. Like at this point, he's vouching for Finch. He's saying, "Hey, no, like it can be better. Like whatever it is you're feeling right now, whatever it is you're going through, you can have a purpose again, even if it isn't exactly what they're offering." Like it felt nice to have them sort of rooting for each other and having each other's backs. All good stuff. So. Really liked all that. So, well, yeah, we'll see where we're going with all this. I mean, we have 3 major villains or antagonists that could be the focal point of the end of the season, and I really don't know which one we're going to focus on more, because we have Quinn. Arguably, I suppose we still have Elias, kind of, but he's more of like a frenemy kind of role at the moment. We got Control, and we've got, you know, this Decima group with Uncle Nolan. So. Yeah, I feel like I'm just going to call him Uncle Nolan. It's not that Greer's a hard name to remember, but he's Uncle Nolan. I think someone pointed out in the comments when he first popped up who he was, and I didn't mention it on the review, but I did recognize him because he's in. Not only is he in Batman Begins and a couple of the other big movies that Christopher Nolan's done, but he's notably in the opening scene of Following, which was the movie that Christopher Nolan did before he was famous. He was right out of college. He was practically still a student. It wasn't a student film. He didn't make it because I don't even think he went. I don't even think he studied filmmaking, if I remember right. But you know, it was this ultra low budget thing he did, and this actor John Nolan was in it because it's his uncle. Of course, I realize now that if he's not his uncle and I'm misremembering the relationship that they have, then I'll sound like an idiot by calling him Uncle Nolan. And even if I'm wrong, I'm still going to call him Uncle Nolan now because it sounds so good. No, good episode. Yeah, lots of movement on many fronts, and it didn't feel cluttered. It didn't feel like it was too overstuffed. It felt like it bounced around all of its plots really well. It felt dense without ever feeling like it was packing in too much, and it was like muddying the waters. And I think part of that is probably just because, you know, a lot of these subplots are playing off things that have already been introduced, and we already understand all of the all the pieces on the board, to go to the chess metaphor, right? We already know all the pieces that are in these subplots. So there's a lot of shorthands. We don't have to explain things quite as much. It felt very fulfilling as an episode to someone who's been watching the show up until this point. This is the sort of episode, though, where if you try to jump in, and we know that network TV loves shows to be something you can jump onto any episode of, this is an episode where even though it seems like it's a standalone plot episode, like almost everything going on outside of the main tech company plot will mean nothing to you if you've not been watching the show, which is not a critique. I prefer it that way. I like serialized TV. I think this is what makes it rewarding. I think this is for the best, but it's just interesting to think about how it's going against what CBS probably wanted from the show. So yeah, just fun to think about. But that is my thoughts on Person of Interest, episode 19 of season 2. So let me know what you thought of this one in the comments. You can hit the like button to help me out. It does help out a bunch if you do. More people will find the channel and the show. If you want to go above and beyond, you can support us over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and help keep all the content coming. So thank you once again for joining me. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?